In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to quickly route the audio from a Pro Tools track to the proper audio hardware. Although everything should be set up correctly in the lab, you may need to adjust these three things. The playback engine, which chooses the audio hardware. The I/O setup may need to go to the default so it matches whatever hardware you've chosen. And be sure to choose the default outputs of 1 and 2 for the tracks. So let's look at these three things. Here's a Pro Tools session. If we go to the Setup, Playback Engine, there's a list at the top that lists all the available hardware devices or audio playback outputs on my computer. I've got an MBox 2 plugged in and an NRV10, and there's a bunch of built-in stuff in the Macintosh. So if you're working in the lab, you'll want to choose the NRV10 if it's not already chosen. It will ask to close and reopen your session. That's fine. Yes. Okay. And now if we go there again, under Playback Engine, it says NRV10. These other settings we'll worry about later. The next thing we need to do is default the I/O setup. So if we go under Setup, I/O, it shows our device here, but it doesn't show all the available outputs. It's using the default inputs and outputs of the last selected device. So if you just click Default, first we click Output tab up here, click Default, boom, there's a bunch of outputs that match our newly selected hardware. Say OK. Then the last part is to check the output of the track. There's the input, there's the output, and make sure it says Out 1 and 2. So the default for the NRV10 is not really output, but Out 1 and 2. Then when you press play, this should play out the NRV10 mixer. I'm going to change my setup one more time. You get some practice at this. If I go back to my playback engine, I'm currently using the MBox 2 for my video presentation. So I'm going to select that. It'll ask to close, reopen. So I've changed the setup to match what I'm currently using. If I go to the I/O setup, there's a bunch of channels in italics because the MBox 2 only has 2 audio outputs. So how do I clear it? Hit Default. It sets it up to match the hardware I selected. Check my output. It is at 1 and 2. And if I press play, everything should be working fine.